What you missed was a conversation about Reconstruction. Sorry about that. Basically, we have a mess in the South with freed blacks, collapsed economy in the South, um, martial law. You have major racial tension. Anything that we face today is nothing compared to what they were facing back then, and trying to maintain control in the South. The slow industrialization of that over time is going to alleviate that. They tried to break up the land, it didn't work really well. And they forced the states to rewrite their constitutions and draft the 13th and 14th Amendment to free the slaves and recognize their right to vote. That's a very short summary of what I just covered in the last 45 minutes. But the getting into now, we're changing gears into Indian wars. So we hear oftentimes in our circles that we treated Indians wrong. Again, about 5 or 10% of that's accurate. The rest of it isn't. So anytime we're going to look at one of these wars, I'm going to have you pull it up. I want you guys to do research. I want you to see what comes up. And we're going to talk about how to do some good research on the internet so that you guys know this in the future. Again, remember, anybody says, well, yeah, we were mean to the Indians. Oh, really? Where did you read that? And why do I like to say that phrase? Because where did they read it?
YouTube,
YouTube, Wikipedia, someplace. Where did Wikipedia or whatever get their information?
people,
Yeah. Where do we want to get the information?
a reliable source.
And what would be a reliable source?
Documents from that time period.
We want original documentation from the time period. And what's the problem with finding original documentation as far as Indian affairs go? What's the major problem?
Right.
The Indians didn't write. Yes, they did. No, they didn't. They didn't have most of them had zero written language until about the early 1800s at best. So most of their early history is not recorded. It just doesn't exist. I have a friend of mine who's got an Indian tribe, and he was telling me, yeah, this is all recorded history. It's really great. I'd like to see it. When's it from? He goes, oh, well, I don't know. I went back to look, and it really is very recent history. It's under 100 years old. It's not helpful. So now from the Indian side, unfortunately, we don't really have their opinions. We don't know. We don't know for sure. What we do have is some good recorded history on the American side, right? Because the colonists came over, were extremely well educated. This is one of the best sources of Plymouth Plantation. If you don't have this book, read this one. Governor Bradford goes into a lot of detail about the relationships with the Indians, specifics on how they behave and what things that they were doing. Read the diary transcripts of Hernando Cortez on his, Central America and his movements up into the Aztec territory. Read the diaries of the Virginia colonists. They're all the same. What was the status of the American Indians when we got here? Tell me about. Here's what you hear in the news, right here. What do you see when you watch Disney? Oh, they're all at peace with the woods and with everybody else. Is that the case? No. Tell me about it.
They're at war with each other.
War with each other. And what did their war with each other look like? Look like everybody else's warfare in the ancient world. I mean, you got to think, when we show up and you compare the original colonists, the original Indians, what's the technology gap?
2,000 years.
Yeah, it's about a 2,000-year separation in technology and education. It's enormous. 2,000 years they were here in this country with nothing. Under the influence of, there's no biblical influence, there's nothing. It's pure satanic influence here. We see mass human sacrifice, massive, large-scale human sacrifice. You see tribes wiping out other tribes. Bradford talks about it, coming, Christianizing certain tribes and coming to their aid against the other tribes. And when they do, these other tribes will just walk in and massacre them all and rape the women and rape the children. I mean, that's just who they are. And it was such commonplace. That was the Native Americans. It's not these happy-go-lucky guys hanging out here worshiping the sun. That's not what it was. It's not reality. So we start there. Now, a lot changes after we get here. But let's remember, what kinds of things change? What do we bring? What were they interested in that we had? We had horses,
Muskets,
gunpowder, muskets,
steel.
steel, tools. Hadn't seen any iron tools. We bring all these implements with us. These are enormous trade value. And what did the Indians have in vast quantities that they didn't need? Land. And they traded it happily for some advanced technology of the day. I mean, you quite frankly, you had a shovel, you had a good piece of technology they didn't have. You know, you had farming equipment, implements you could tie behind a horse and plow. That's huge. They didn't have that, right? They were still using sticks all put together. These are things that they wanted, and land was extremely plentiful, extremely plentiful. So they had no problem trading it. Some tribes more into trading than others, at least at first. Now we talked about that going forward at first. Let's get into some of the wars though. Let's start in 1622. Look up the Powhatan War, Powhatan. That's one of the first recorded wars. Powhatan War. If I go in here and I do a Google search and I say Powhatan War, what am I going to see?
Series of three conflicts with Powhatan Confederacy, English colonists, and Virginia, spanning from 1610 to 1646. These wars were primarily driven by English expansion into Powhatan land and resulted in significant loss of life and land in the Powhatan.
And you're reading that on the you guys are looking up here, right? You guys are seeing this. You're probably, when you Google it, you're getting this up top. Now, when I look at this, what's the first thing that should pop out to me as I'm looking at this little thing? See this little purple thing right here? Wikipedia. Who's the sponsor of that piece of information? Wikipedia. What do we know about Wikipedia?
It's not the most reliable source ever.
Far worse than not the most reliable. It specifically is overtly a politically backed organization designed to change, to bring a political bias to information. Now, to be fair, you're not going to go to any website that's not going to have some degree of political bias. But Wikipedia is notorious for just putting it right in there as if it's fact rather than stating fact versus opinion. Right. So that's important. So anytime you see that, you got to look at what your source is immediately. Let's scroll down. What's the next one down? Britannica. Britannica is not a whole lot better, unfortunately. Then what's the next one down after that?
I think it's Wikipedia.
Wikipedia, right?
World history, though.
Then you get to world history. What I usually like to try to do when I do these is I like to look at 2 or 3 of these. So somebody open up the Powhatan Wars. We may not get a lot of divergence on the Powhatan Wars because it's 1622. Let's jump forward. Let me just give you the Powhatan Wars very briefly. The Indians, well, actually, somebody open up Wikipedia and tell me what it says. And somebody else open up Britannica, and somebody else open up world history. So Walker, take Wikipedia. Thomas, take Britannica. Caleb, take world history encyclopedia.
Iron Thing, or
And then somebody else take somebody further down. And just give me a quick summary of what it's saying. I'm curious, basically, who it's calling the good guys and who it called the bad guys. That's what you're looking for. Just read it really quick for flavor and see who's it blaming and what do you think happened based upon these different websites. And then also at the bottom of the website, look and see if they cite a source. Source is probably some book. If it's not, if that book was like, somebody's commentary on it, that book's no better than the source itself. If they say, well, we're talking about Jones's history of, let's see. So here we go. I'm in the Wikipedia one. 1622. What I do like about Wikipedia is you got all these links to these other things, but you don't know if any of them are any good. So you got to check them against other things. If I go to the bottom, you can see some of the references. By the way, if you look in here, early conflict, edit, right? So here's where you can add your own edits. That's really weird. I'm trying to see where they have their references. So here we go. Chief Powhatan, there's a number 2. If I click on it, Glenn Keith, Captain John Smith and Native Americans, Virginia Magazine of History and Biography. That's not a source. That's a second order source. Look at that, right? Early conflict. Everybody see what I'm looking up on there? Captain John Smith and the Native Americans. Okay, so when was that? Let's look at that. I'd like to look at that source. Let's see what that source says. Oh, here you go, references. First Anglo-Powhatan War, Encyclopedia Virginia, 2017. That's not helpful because that's somebody's commentary. I want to see if there's any of these are original source. Look at the dates on all these sources. Look up here. Everybody look up on the board. Look at the dates on all of these sources. Anybody see a source? I mean, this is 2017, 1944. That's the oldest source. 1991, 2013, 2003. I'm not seeing any original sources. Not one. See a problem there? Does that speak problem to you? That should speak huge problem to you. Nothing here is an original source. Ouch. Okay, that's problem number one. So any information I see on this website, I'll take circumspect. Let's go to the next website. Who's got who took by the way, read through, did it tell you, did it give you who's good bad guys and who's bad guys?
It said it was documented since the 1600s by people like Captain John Smith and others.
Okay, that's better. Captain John Smith.
ChatGPT.
You're on Chat GPT. Okay.
It said all of them.
All right. Well, that's good. So what it is documented by Captain John Smith. That's probably in his diaries. But do we have any of these that actually cite those sources? Hopefully you guys are getting something out of this drill here.
Oh,
Somebody look at who had world history encyclopedia. Or what was yours, Thomas? Want to have you look at
Mine is Britannica.
Britannica. Okay.
Um,
What are they saying?
so for that one, introduction explains it as basically Englishmen settle. They have some decent relations with Powhatan. They basically establish peace. Then Powhatan dies. Englishmen start encroaching on territory. And then his son massacres a bunch of Englishmen, and then it starts a war. At least that's the introduction. But
Okay.
they get into more detail on the later ones.
All right, where do they get their facts?
Check.
And those are great summaries, and some of that's accurate. Powhatan's earlier brother led his people in a sudden attack against colonists throughout the area, massacring 347, total of about 1,200. Intermediate warfare followed for about 14 years. That's fairly accurate. And if it gets into some basic, this happened, that happened, but we start talking about causes, that gets vague, right? Like it says, the conflict is resulted destruction of Indian power. English colonists who had settled in Jamestown were at first strongly motivated by their need of native corn to keep peace with Powhatans and have them more harm. Okay, that's probably true. By the time Powhatan's death, settlers had discovered the highly profitable tobacco crop, pressing increasingly into Indian territory for rich new land to cultivate. Is that a true statement?
Kind of who might have purchased it.
Yeah. What does it mean pressing into? But we certainly did. Did we do so legitimately? That's the question. Problem is, you can see there's no sources being cited on almost every one of these websites. You can see this over and over again. Okay. So unfortunately, to get the answers to these questions, you have to dig pretty deep. And the way I would dig deep if I was doing this and I wanted to dig deep fast is you want to look at 4 or 5 different websites. And you're going to see a variety of opinions as to what started the war. And then you can figure out what are the common facts, and then you would know if both a pro-Indian, if you will, modern view of Indians, and a pro-American modern view, if they're citing the same facts, those are good facts. They're going to cite different conclusions as to why those facts come about, but there's some facts in it. Are you guys following me on this? Extremely important. Extremely important. So now let me open up some wars. And let me get you into them. And then you guys can start pulling these up as they come. But let's start off with the Powhatan War 1622. Indians massacre 350 colonists. How do you feel about that if you're a colonist?
I didn't like that.
Yes.
Didn't like that.
Grounds for war.
Why did they do that? Does it matter?
Yeah, it does matter why they would do it.
I mean, they killed people. That's something that can't do.
Certainly a conflict, certainly an unresolved conflict. And their answer was to execute massacre cause. Why is this particularly shocking to the colonists.
Because they just set up a peace treaty sign.
You're going to see this happen. This is a repeated theme in all of these wars. The Indians get upset. There's some kind of negotiations going on, and the Indians will execute a massacre. This is not an attack of an army base. This is an attack of some town or village, and they will kill them all. They'll usually go in, the way they'll scout the men, they'll rape the women first. They'll take some of them as slaves, and then they'll kill the rest. That should be shocking to you. But it is also commonplace. And where was it the most commonplace in our, as we studied about this? Where do we see this elsewhere? They're not the first ones in history to do this.
Ancient times.
Ancient warfare. That's the rule of ancient warfare. So these guys are stuck in ancient warfare, and we have a Christianized culture over here now that has rules to war. There's flags, there's peace treaties, there's negotiations, there's give and take, there's courts, all these sorts of things. This is how conflicts are to be settled in a modern civilized world. And these are not modern civilized people. They're savage Indians. They don't like to play by those rules. They don't even understand those rules, to be fair to them. Just, but by the same token, they're not playing by the rules. Like, no, we're not playing courts and negotiations, most of them. Some of them do. Got to give credit. There's a few tribes out there that jump in and they use it to their advantage, and they win. They win some of these cases in the courts, but most of them don't. All right, Powhatan Wars. Massacre 350. The colonists and English counterattacked, destroying their villages and crops, and forced them to withdraw. Go forward to time. The Pequot, the Beaver Wars, King Philip's War. King Philip's War is recorded in here. By the way, King Philip is not an English king. It's a name they gave to an Indian king. Called him King Philip. And William's War. Multiple influencers include, there's trade between the French, the English, and the Spanish conflicts. What ends up happening in many of these little wars is these Indian tribes are now trading with various continental powers. How many continental powers are there in the United States at this time? There's three, at least three. You can count Russia, but they're really minor. English, the French, and the Spanish. And what happens when they're backing the French and the French go to war with the English? They're back to French. All right, we fight in English? Cool. That's an English colony. Can I torch it? Well, I torched it. Oh, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. Yeah, well, we torched it. Torched. They're bad guys. You can see that this is how the conflicts go down, right? So this causes a lot of these little wars here. Territorial disputes between tribes and the tribes and colonies. There's limited records to survive with very little Indian writings, and you're going to see that throughout these wars, and some of them are recorded here in Bradford's history right alone, just this one. This is I keep citing this one because this is the most thorough recording of early American history. This is the most thorough document. There's others, but nothing quite as thorough as this. That's what it's at. Okay, let's talk about the Apache Wars. You can look at your notes, 1849 to 1824. The Apaches were perhaps the most brutal of the Indian tribes. There were others too. The Sticks. We talked about the Stick Indians last time, right? The Red Sticks. And they're going to fight. They're going to fight in the Texas Southwest. They do total war strategy as well. They're actually very, very good. The problem with the Apaches is not only are they very brutal, they're extremely effective. They're very dangerous. They're a warlike tribe. Even amongst the other Indians, they have a reputation for being very warlike. French Indian Wars. What happens there? Anybody remember the Battle of Tectoctolon that we talked about? Tectoctolon, no. Battle of Monongahela. We talked about that. Braddock's defeat. You saw the video of it. What do the Indians do?
While he was going through, he was acting like he was just walking along. They used guerrilla warfare to Kathleen on both sides, shooting down massacred troops.
Yeah. And they're back in the French. So we see these wars. The Cherokee Wars. Let's go up to the Cherokee Wars, 1759. Type in your computer Cherokee Wars. And we're going to limit our Cherokee Wars for a minute, 1759 to 1761, that time frame of Cherokee. By the way, another free aside document that mentions the Indians. What document is very popular mentioning the Indians? Remember? Is that?
A point of plantation.
That is. What other document? Much tinier, much smaller reference to it. How about the Declaration of Independence? Does it talk about the Indians? It does. I'll remind you. Hold on. These are the charges against the English king. He has incited domestic insurrections among us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers. This is in a renowned document. The merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. Where is this recorded? The Declaration of Independence. This is by very learned men. This is a well-examined document. This isn't just fable. This isn't just their belief. This is recorded history that this is the way they fight warfare. This is a great document to turn to. Oh, well, these guys were a bunch of bigots. Really? These guys? The guys who wrote the Declaration of Independence, they would put that in there because they're bigots? I beg to differ. I think they're probably right. But that is, it matches what Bradford says. Matches what the Virginia colony. It matches the military records of all of the military history in the Seminole Wars, in the Cherokee Wars. The Indians are brutal. And I know I'm thumping home this point, but I'm giving you the sources to cite. And they're important. Okay, so now we'll take it in large gulps. You ready? Okay, let's go down the line. Cherokee Wars. Anybody find anything on Cherokee Wars on the internet?
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it.
The Cherokee people engaged in Europeans during the early 17th century.
Right there, that's fine.
But this is an overview by people.
Okay.
What it is. By 1673, the Cherokee had acquired muskets from Spanish Florida, demonstrating their growth and health and changing landscape impacted by European presence. An early delegation was sent to protest the enslavement of Cherokee people by whites. Trades introduced European goods and began shipping.
Ooh, where did it say enslavement by people of the whites? What is that?
It doesn't say a date, it just says between 1673 and the trade introduced European goods and began to ship traditional Cherokee and Cherokee lifestyles as hunting deerskin. Trade increased the competition for resource source of gold and sweeping the tribes intensified.
Okay. Are there any sources cited?
Nope,
Of course not. Why not?
beside sources, you can see next through it.
And look at the dates and the sources. If those dates are at least pre-1800, those dates are not those. I don't see why that would be a cited source. They don't have any first. Okay, let's keep going. I beat this to death. Let's look at the Battle of Tippecanoe. So anyhow, you're going to find that we have a Cherokee War. The British encroach. There is British encroachment and violation of treaties. And the Cherokees actually properly defend their land. This is one of the wars where the Indians are right. In 1776, they expand the war and attack the colonists, seeking to gain advantage while they're at war with England and create a divide. The Cherokee were one of those few tribes that actually showed some degree of restraint. I want you to keep the Cherokee separate in your mind from most of the other Indian tribes. There's 2 or 3 tribes that sort of become Christianized, and show restraint. Those tribes are treated differently because they sort of modernize. Battle of Tippecanoe, 1812, Indiana. The Shawnee Indians, led by the prophet, Brother Tecumseh, reacting to unfair and treaty enforcements for the land, they form a confederacy. Major General William Harrison goes to confront them. Harrison, the commanding general of the cavalry, gets out there and says, all right, let's do a ceasefire for a minute while I look into this and we try to figure out how to negotiate the treaty. Because there are treaties, there are written treaties that could be being violated. The Shawnee Indians offer a ceasefire, and that night, they violate the ceasefire. They ambush him in the middle of the night and they kill how many? They burn a U.S. town. They violate the ceasefire and they attack the American troops. American troops respond by burning their town down, which was abandoned. And later on, Harrison uses the victory slogan to gain the presidency in 1840 Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Creek Indian War, 1814. You guys remember that one from the other night? The Horseshoe Bend? Okay, that was a massacre. Again, an Indian massacre. What are you guys seeing as a theme here? What's the theme?
Americans do something to annoy the Indians, the Indian restriction act.
That's right. That's the problem. The problem is not necessarily that we're not doing things to, we could be doing things that are wrong. Maybe we are being unfair to them. But the reaction to us being to whatever the unfair trade agreement is that they don't like is to massacre us. You seeing the problem? Get that into the vocabulary, and all of a sudden the nature of the Indian Wars change dramatically. But that's the reality. As long as we have that straight, all of a sudden this begins to make sense. Let me get into the exceptions now. So now we do want to go into the exceptions to the rule. Okay, let me give you a few more that are not exceptions. The Creek Indian War, 1814, the Seminole Wars, 1 through 3, 1816, 1858. Same sort of stuff, right? We go out there, we're trying to handle land disputes, because here's what happens. One Indian tribe will sell a piece of property. The colonists will move in, another Indian tribe doesn't recognize that, and so they go to war over it. And again, when they go to war, it's just brutal. And then when they go to war and get brutal, we get mean and we kick them off the land. Yes. Do they deserve it? Yes, they deserve it in most cases. However, exceptions. Let's keep going. Seminole Wars, the Comanche War, 1840, same sort of stuff. They're defeated by the Texas Rangers. Now let's go into the exceptions. The Trail of Tears, 1830 to 1850. There are 4 tribes I'll give you that are, well, 3 of these 4 tribes that are in fact wrongly treated. The Cherokee, the Seminoles, and then later toward the end, the Chickasaw and the Choctaw. But the Creek and the Seminole movements were valid responses to unprovoked vicious raids, right? So those guys, the Creek and the Seminoles, the Indians are wrong. The Cherokee, the Chickasaw, and the Choctaw, however, they had valid complaints. And in those cases, particularly with Cherokee, we found gold on their land and we won. Was that?
I have the Trail of Tears.
But there we go. Tell me about the Trail of Tears.
Sure. It was during the 1830s to around the 1850s, sparked by gold and other natural resources found on what would have been Native American land. In 1830, the Indian Removal Act was passed by Andrew Jackson, which allowed an exchange or negotiation of lands with the Indians. It led to the forced relocation of 5 of the more civilized Native American tribes: the Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole. The Cherokee removal occurred in 1838 to 1839. People were separated at gunpoint, given minimal time to collect belongings, and forced to march extremely long distances, potentially thousands of miles. Estimates suggest potentially 100,000 of these people who got relocated from the 5 tribes. Jackson held some negotiations with the tribe. However, they were clearly not in favor of the Native Americans. In fact, this sparked the Second Seminole War. Cherokee never agreed to these negotiations as a people. In fact, they sued the state in multiple cases.
Yep.
Such as Cherokee, I think, versus Georgia. And believed wrongly that the U.S. would honor the land agreements. So they didn't listen because they thought the U.S. would honor the land agreements. Around 4,000 of the 15,000 Cherokee relocated died. Around 10,000 from the 5 tribes. The mortality rates vary between sources. They were located east of the Mississippi River, and its effects are still felt to this day.
Okay, and you guys are seeing what happened here, right? Now, broadly speaking, here's the problem. There's a whole bunch of bad Indian tribes and a handful of good ones. Because the people are so conditioned to think that all of the Indians are bad because of these bad tribes, they assume all Indians are bad. That's broadly the problem, is they get a stereotype of all Indians are savages. They all are. They're all vicious. They'll all stab you in the back. They'll burn your villages down. They'll rape your women. They'll kill your children. But that's not always true. And there are these exceptions, particularly the Cherokee and the Choctaw. And they actually try to work the system the way it's supposed to be worked. Okay, you want to negotiate a treaty. They understand our language. They can speak our language. They can write our language, and they're going to try to negotiate in our courts and on our terms, and they do it legitimately. But there's such a fear that, well, they're Indians, that nobody's listening to them. And so we simply take their land and we simply move them out. And notice who we lump them in with. We lump them in with the Seminoles. We still lump them in with the Creek Indians. Those are two violent Indian tribes. Why are they in with the rest of those? Does this make sense? You can understand how the problem comes about now. Okay. Let's go all the way to the last one, the Battle of Little Bit. So by the way, the tribes that have a legitimate claim against us today would be the Cherokee and the Choctaw, those Indian tribes, and they do. Now they're fairly small to be. Did you hear the numbers? You're talking 15,000. So they're not huge tribes, even though they're the bigger tribes. So we're not talking about a lot of people, but nevertheless, those people were done wrong. They're moved west, and then we move them again. So those people to this day probably have a legitimate complaint, a very legitimate complaint of some reparations because we violated a treaty. That reparation probably ought to be paid, quite frankly. That one should. When people talk about, well, you need to repay for slavery, no, that's a different story. But that was a nation that was displaced wrongly. Follow me? But when you hear about this, put everything into context, back up, put it in context. Let's talk about the vast majority of these Indians were savages, they were brutal, and most of them treated us far worse than we ever treated them. Far worse than we ever treated them. A couple instances where we did wrong, and we have to answer for those. But in general, our relations with the Indians were not at all, not even close to what is generally represented. And let them bring out the facts. Let's see what they have for facts. I have yet to see in all these websites I've gone to and looked for facts supporting their side. There's no facts. No facts. It is short of facts. They come up with facts, but there's no support for those facts. You guys with me? Okay. Battle of Little Bighorn. Sitting Bull, the Sioux and Cheyenne tribes. Tribes constantly moving. These guys are interesting because they're a nomadic tribe. There's quite a few nomadic tribes, but these guys are the most nomadic that I'm aware of. The Indians don't want to move and give up more land. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer fought in the war between states, is pursuing these Indians. And he has to back off. He's uncertain of the enemy strength. And he goes into Custer's last stand. Who's heard of Custer's last stand? See if I can find a video clip on Custer's last stand. I don't know what I'm going to find here. This will be interesting. Custer's last stand video. Videos. Battle of Bighorn. Short one. And fun ones. Let's see. Let's see what this looks like. See what happens.
The 141st anniversary of Custer's last stand is next Sunday. It turns out there's more to the story of that epic battle, as Moraka now tells us.
Oh, this may not be any good.
Every summer along the banks of Montana's Little Bighorn River, the strains of the
All right, that's not going to help me. Hold on. I need something shorter, more to the point. Should research these. Let's see. How's this going to look?
Custer's last stand, the final moments unfolded. As the battle at Little Bighorn raged on, Custer and his men made their last stand on a small hill. Surrounded by native warriors, their ammunition running low, the soldiers knew they were facing their end. Custer, determined to fight to the last, continued to command his troops, but the situation was hopeless. One by one, the soldiers fell under the relentless attack. The battle lasted only an hour, but in that short time, every one of Custer's 210 men was killed. The scene was a testament to bravery and the tragic consequences of misjudgment and arrogance in battle. Follow for more history.
Okay, here's what happens. They're pursuing an Indian tribe. He doesn't know what their total strengths are. He has no idea. He's a cavalry commander. 7th Cavalry, I believe it is. That's gonna be important later on, because the guy who inherits 7th Cavalry many years later is Halmore. Come back there. You guys ever seen Soldiers Once and Young? He's the 7th Cavalry. It's like, wait a minute. The guys who were massacred at the Battle of Bighorn. They're pursuing this large Indian tribe that numbers in thousands. They have 210 men. They're pursuing them. They stop. They realize they're outnumbered. They move back into a defile draw, and the Sitting Bull turns on him. He turns around and he surrounds them. Simple math. They have arrows versus carbines. The carbines were better. Maybe. Arrows were pretty effective as well. And so in under an hour, George Custer is massacred, all of his men. The reaction to this is, here's the question. Was Sitting Bull justified to turn and fight?
Different people.
Who's he being pursued by? Yeah, he's got a military force to his front. This is an interesting fight, right? The Americans get really upset about this, but is it fair for them to get upset? This is a military conflict. We are pursuing an Indian tribe with cavalry, and the Indians turn around and decide to fight, and they kill them all pretty quickly. Was it a military conflict?
Yes.
Were we armed? Were we going after him? Kind of deserved it, didn't we? I mean, at least they did not. This was not we call it a massacre. It really wasn't a massacre. It was a defeat, and they were massacred. They were all killed, but it wasn't a massacre like they were going to some town or village and wiping everybody out. This changes the nature, but the American people do not react to it that way. They think of it as another Indian massacre. Again, their mindset is Indian massacre, killing women and children. That didn't occur here. That did not happen. What happened is they killed the 7th Cav. Okay. They end up pushing these guys further west. The Sioux and Cheyenne tribes actually don't resist. They just go further west. Like, fine, we're not going to fight you. We'll go further west. We'll get away from you. Okay, we're almost to the end of this, guys. I realize this is a lot of stuff. Actually, we're to the end of that. I'm done with the Indians for a minute. Let's stop and talk about the Indians. Okay, what are the takeaways?
Majority of Indian tribes, and we were in the right most of the battles, even if we were in the right beginning of the battles. There were exceptions, of course, Cherokee and Choctaws.
Okay. What are the takeaways?
We were in the right until we expected to always be in the right.
It's a good take as well. You do need to push back when somebody says that we treat the Indians well. You need to push back, because that's mostly not true. And I need you guys to know that, because that's a modern misnomer. Foster.
Most of the Indian warfare was no rules, it was savage.
Right. And when you have the conversation with somebody about this, I want you to begin by framing the framework first. What do you think the American Indians were like before we got here? Oh, they were peaceful. Really? Why do you believe that? What kind of diaries exist? And you guys need to have a couple of these sources right in your hands. The diaries that I know that exist are of Plymouth Plantation, Fernando Cortez's diaries, and the diaries of the Virginia colonists. And what do they all say? They were brutal. They were brutal. Mass human sacrifice. Cortez saw that himself. Nobody even challenges that. And yet, people think that they were peaceful here. They weren't. Not peaceful. Okay. And then go on from there. Well, we were mean to them. No, we weren't. Most of the time we traded fairly. We gave them stuff they wanted for land that they had plentifully. Most of the time. Now there were exceptions. Then go into the exceptions and say, why were we opposed to the Indians? Why? Why were we opposed to Indians?
Because they were wrong.
Yeah, what did they do? They massacred us. They killed us all. It was not restrained warfare. Get those points out there and then have your conversation. I said, well, that's not, because they're not going to challenge on you, because at the end of the day, they don't have any facts. There are no facts. You have facts. Cite the Declaration of Independence, cite the Plymouth Plantation, cite Hernando Cortez. Cite those facts. Those are facts. And then start there. Okay, I'm gonna leave the Indians alone. Anything else you guys want to talk about on Indians? All right, we take a short pause. I'm just gonna leave the camera running, so it's all one video. Take just a couple minutes, hit the head, get a great drink of water, then we're gonna get into some other very interesting stuff. Stand up, all right. Get some more caffeine up in this place.
Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah.
I've never asked you, how did you end up using the Pink Panther for?
So that's Owens Corning. Owens Corning's mascot is Pink Panther. Since we're an Owens Corning installer, that's where it comes from. Absolutely. All right, let me see while you guys are getting yourself together. Let me get some things put together. Now I'm gonna get into some stuff. Trail of Tears, Thomas covered that one, good. Did you get, anybody get your morality papers?
Sure.
Morality-
It's a rough draft.
Yep.
I've also got one. I haven't done any of my papers yet. Let me see what you've done. Cause I didn't write down last week's point. Did you do? Pick it up. We all speak.
First sentence ends in a preposition, but I like where you're going. Put your name on the top of this and I'll take a look at it this week. Get yours?
It's a rough draft, so it's not.
It is. No, absolutely.
Same with me. And if there's anything like if I wrote it wrong, or if there's something missed about it.
Staple this together. Staple it over there. Put your name across the top and give it over to me. Oh, no, it's bracket. Get it over there. You don't have a paper because I don't expect you to have one. Foster, talk to me, Goose.
I am working on it and, not the, come on, rough draft or the whole paper next week.
There's a draft.
Just draft.
I mean, so this is like a 3-page draft or an outline. I need something.
Didn't know.
So here's the thing, just so everybody knows, it's fine, you didn't know, that's fine. Here's the takeaway. If you sit through the classes, you participate in discussions and whatnot, you will get your American history credit. If you would like to also get your Bible credit, you need to give me your morality warfare paper with all the Bible references. want your English credit, I need also the second paper. And we'll take you through all of that, which is gonna be whatever your topical paper and your other independent outlines. Then you'll get your English credit as well. So you decide how many credits you want to get out of class. One credit, 2 credits, or 3 credits, or I guess they go credits of 3. So 3 credits, 6 credits, or 9 credits. Your choice, depending on how much effort you put into it. Nobody has to do any of this stuff. Now, if your parents are wanting you to have an English and a Bible credit, you've done a good bit of the work. You've sat through the classes. You have the knowledge. Now you have to put them on paper, and you have to dig through the Bible, get scriptures. I'll take that one. You got yours? I'm on top of that one too. Just so I don't forget. Okay, let's get back into it. All right. We can get through this. Get into World War I, life will get interesting again. Spanish-American War, 1898. Let's see, where do I, Seminole Wars. Chandler, what, did you research Seminole Wars? Oh. Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna leave it off already then. All right, we're into the other ones. Okay, Spanish-American Wars. This is where you guys are gonna learn, teach a lot of this stuff. 1898. What was the status of Cuba? What is Cuba, or what was Cuba in 1898? To whom did it belong?
Spain.
Belonged to Spain, the Spanish Empire. Who was in Cuba? Cubans. What language do they speak? Spanish. Isn't it interesting? So all of these Latin American countries from Mexico all the way down south, they speak Spanish. Why?
Spain.
Because Spain. How did Spain work with their colonies? Conquered them. But what they, so most of the English speaking world is English speaking. Why?
Because England followed a more Roman way of colonizing, where they would conquer and then educate and reform.
Right. They conquer and educate. The fact that they gave them a written language and a spoken language is a benefit because they put them into one language. What did Spain do? Look at Hernando Cortez. Anybody read the history of Hernando Cortez? We talked about this a while back. What's the first thing he do when he came over? By the way, he didn't land in on the boats. He began to Christianize the Indians around him. He brought them the gospel, and then he brought them a language. And from that point forward, those tribes actually had a written language. Anybody remember, if you read early in Plymouth Plantation, I think it's page 72, it's reading earlier today. The colonists are in America. They're out doing work. They've seen the Indians come and go. And all of a sudden, an Indian steps out of the woods speaking English. Anybody know who that was? An Indian steps out of the woods that speaks English. Broken English, but English enough that they can understand him. Anybody remember his name? Squanto.
Oh, wait, yeah.
Squanto, right? You guys have heard that story. So he'd already been educated, and he's got a great horse history. I'll let you go read about Squanto later on. He's a great man. Yeah, you can read his history later on. Let's go into Spanish colonization, right? Hernando Cortez, others that conquered, we'll use that word, or settled, however you want to look at it. What are they bringing to the colonists? There you are, you're an Indian in Central America. Hernando Cortez and his ships land on the shore, and you're looking at them. These guys are weird. What do they have that's weird?
Gosh, it's completely different.
Different fashion,
Skin color.
skin color. They're white guys. They got beards. Nobody on your side did. That's unusual. Indians don't have beards. They have beards. They're wearing armor. They got these weaponry, and they have one god. Now, are they really a threat to you initially when they land there? No, there's land everywhere. There's tribes everywhere. Whatever you want to be here, go for it. Be here. So the tribes approach them. Why do the tribes want to approach these colonists? Same reason you would want to approach the spaceship if it landed down here. Ooh, you guys got lightsabers? Can I see one of those? Sure, there you go. Right? I mean, imagine that's an equivalent scenario. These guys are way ahead of where they are. They want to be around the colonists. They want to interact with the colonists. They want to trade with the colonists because colonists had stuff that they have. The only thing they have to trade is we got land primarily. We got land, we have some other resources. We got trees, we got animals, we got corn, things that colonists need. But generally speaking, that's what they have. And when they do, they're gonna develop relations with them. Because the Indians are stupid. They might be savage, but they're not stupid either. Like, okay, they know how to negotiate. They can get out there and they can have the conversations. They can trade for stuff, so they can do that, right? And so they're Christianized. But look at how much of the world speaks Spanish. That speaks to the influence of the Spanish Empire, right? So Cuba is one of those countries that belongs to the Spanish crown, 1898. What's going on 1895? Anybody do anybody know anything about the Spanish American War? Somebody should, because somebody read the Rough Riders. Who's that? Walker?
I researched the Rough Riders specifically.
Okay, so we're not to you yet. When I start talking about things that you know something about, stop me. Okay. So we'll get up to where he is. He's gonna get into the Rough Riders. All right. The Spaniards are accused of being brutal to the Cubans. Cubans say they're being brutal to us, and they start to rebel. Now, at this time, in 1898, we're having difficulty with the Spanish Empire as well. Why? Well, let's go back further in time. Spain used to own Mexico. What happened in that conflict? Mexico rebelled, Santa Anna rebelled, declared independence of Mexico, and then Texas had a war with Mexico, declared their independence from Santa Anna because he was a warlord. They joined the United States. Santa Anna didn't like that, so he attacked Mexico, and we took Santa Anna and Mexico to task. Winfield Scott beat the crap out of them. We took California from them. We took Nevada from them. We took Arizona. And we said, you ever touch us again, you mess with our people, we'll be back. And we declared peace with them. So there's a boundary between us and Spain. But the Spanish Empire is still out there. It's in its waning days. Spanish Empire is definitely decreasing very quickly. We don't have good relations with Spain. Spain's empire, they lost Mexico. Remember, Spain sold Florida to us many years before that. Right? So the Spanish Empire is in decline. They're trying to hang on to Cuba, trying to hang on to the Caribbean, and they have presence in the West Indies. Let me see if I can get a map up of the Spanish Empire around this time. Okay. Map of Spanish Empire, 1898. Let's see what I can find. Images. There we go. That's a good image. That's probably not bad. Okay, we'll go with this one for now. That's a decent enough. That's a pretty sizable empire at one point. I think that's overstretched because that shows most of French territory in Louisiana. But some of this territory, most of this territory here is Spanish. They sell us Florida and they sell us these states back in, did that a couple lessons ago. So that was sold to us, so we'll buy that.
Extremely, considering how small Spain is.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I mean, the Spanish Empire is so overlooked because the English Empire and the French empires are so enormous. This is generally considered small by comparison, right? So they've got all of this. They're going to sell this to us. I'll get you the dates. I'll go back to that. We buy that from them right after we buy the Louisiana territory off the French. So that's how we get a lot of our territory. They lose Mexico to Santa Anna. So they lose all of that to Santa Anna, unfairly probably. And then of course Santa Anna loses it to us. And so they still hold Cuba and all of this. And then I got a little bit over here as well. That's their empire. And then they have, of most note, they have here. They got the Southwest Indies, Southeast Indies. Sorry, this would be they have those there. Southeast Asia. Thank you, Southeast Asia. That's their empire, and they have some issues with America up to this point. So here's what happens: the Spanish and the Cubans start. There's a revolt going on. Cubans say they're revolting against Spanish because they're being brutal. Spanish disagree. We send a battleship to the Spanish harbor. Anybody know what battleship we send?
The USS.
Teach, you know the answer to that? The USS Maine. We send the USS Maine to, that's kind of weird. We send a US battleship to the Cuban harbor to be there during a internal war, civil war between the Cubans and the Spanish. What do you think of that move? Yes, no, maybe? There she is. USS Maine. Boom. Send one of those suckers over there. At a big battleship? Yeah. So send the USS Maine over there to that's got a heck of a presence. By the way, so it's a big white ship. We'll get into that in a minute. That can make, let me find something else so I get the dates correct here. The Great White Fleet. Yeah, 1907 to 1909. So we're not to the Great White Fleet yet, but it will be. Okay, so we're not to that point in history just yet. No, stop. Thank you. Okay, we send that battleship or a similar such battleship to that to Cuba. What happens? What happens to that battleship? Anybody know? It sinks. It detonates and sinks. Now, a huge question as to why it detonates and sinks. It does. What's the speculation? Could have been sabotaged. By who? By the Spanish. The name of that ship is the Maine. A cry. There's the assumption that the Spanish sink it. The U.S. Navy never actually says that. They say we're not certain what happened. It actually seems a little suspicious. How would the Spanish get aboard to sink that thing? They didn't sink it from the outside. It was not attacked from the outside. Something happened that detonated it. Could have been a mine, maybe. Could have been some mishandling of powder caused a detonation, caused the thing to sink. In retrospect, we think it might have been some kind of an accident, mishandling of explosives. Nevertheless, it's pinned on Spain. The quote, the battle cry is "Remember the Maine." To hell with Spain. That's the battle cry. And now all of a sudden, the Americans decide to back the Cubans. So now we have legitimacy, so to speak, to get into the war between Cuba and Spain. And initially, that's our only point of entry. Is we're just going to deal with Cuba. Hey, we think you sabotaged our ship, so we're going to back the Cubans against. What's Spain's reaction? Anybody want to guess? Venture a guess? What does Spain do?
Think you're shit. Now you're attacking us.
Well, they say that, but they don't stop there. Their pride's been hurt. So they declare war on us. Now, that means they declare war on all of us. We happen to have a fleet in the Pacific and a sizable armed force in the Pacific Ocean at this point. There's prime real estate. Let me pull up that map again. Over here, there's prime real estate in Southeast Asia. In fact, we have a fleet that's here. We got a fleet out in Hawaii. We don't own Hawaii yet, but we have presence in the Pacific Ocean. And we're going to use this as a pretext. So, well, y'all declared war on us? Because we didn't declare war on them. We agreed to intervene in the Cuban-Spanish War. They declare war on us. And so now, on April 20th, 1890, let me get the sequence of events. February 15th. Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain. Spain sinks. The Maine sinks. April 20th. This is 2 months later. The U.S. demands Cuban independence. That's all we demanded. We said, okay, we want Cuban independence because we think that you guys sank our ship. Kind of strange way to connect dots. How do we get from here? How do we get from you sank our ship to you need to now let the Cubans go? How do we make that jump?
Because the politics of the time when Cuba agrees leaving.
Cuba. The enemy of my enemy is my ally. So we're gonna make them pay for it by giving us Cuba. It's kind of a little weird. 2 days later, Spain declares war on the United States. Same day, US orders a naval blockade and calls for 125,000 volunteers. And then 3 days later, April 25th, the US declares the war on Spain. How is it these events are able to occur so quickly now? 1898, what's the method of communication?
Very recent.
Telegraph is in place, right? So we got telegraphs out there that you can actually communicate via telegraph. Find out when a telephone was created. That's a good question. Somebody Google that on your computer. When was the telephone invented?
When was the telephone invented? March 7th, 1876.
Okay, so yes, we have telephones. There you go. So information can move much quicker now, which this is why this is fascinating. If Spain can, within 2 days, get the information that we're insisting that they free Cuba and they can declare war on us, that's a pretty fast turnaround. How long did it take previously, prior to this? Months. That's right, months. So communication, once communication speeds up, things start to happen a lot faster. History is going to get a lot more interesting because it's going to move at a much quicker rate. All right, so now we're sending troops. We're going to raise a force to send troops to Cuba. What force are we going to send to Cuba? Ding, ding, ding. You're in Walker. Tag, that is correct.
This was
Tell me about Theodore Roosevelt.
the Rough Riders. The Rough Riders were voluntary cavalry force who fought in the Spanish American War. The leader was Colonel Leonard Wood. They got their name from their very famous second in command, Theodore Roosevelt. Though they were cavalry, most of their forces were actually left in America. I'm sorry, most of their forces were left in America. They ended up fighting the majority of their battles on foot. They were a mix of many different people, from cowboys to Indians to Ivy League athletes, which greatly romanticized the group to the public, which is later on a main reason why they were so publicly loved. Their biggest contribution to the war was at the Battle of San Juan Hill, where Roosevelt led a charge up Kettle Hill, leading his platoon to victory and establishing a connection to take San Juan Hill for the battle.
What did that battle look like?
It was not too unsimilar to what we did in that key analysis class. What we did there. There was two different hills, one main hill and another one. They took the main hill, which is where the Rough Riders.
Tell me about their weaponry and the equipment at the top.
The weaponry at the time was rifles, and they were starting to use it more like rifles, and also sidearm pieces, which were like pistols and revolvers.
Okay, let's go back into military history real quick. The last war we just covered, that was a real war, was what? Right? Civil War ended. We got a 30 years of peace, give or take, from there till now. We're not at war with anybody, really. Do some Indian wars, but those are what are Indian? Okay, let's go to the Indian wars. What would they look like in this stage? Between what? What kind of forces were we using typically against Indians? Militia, cavalry. We were using horse-mounted troops that would go in horses, they dismount and they fight against the Indians, and the Indians would do the same thing in reverse, right? So we had cavalry warfare going on. Cavalry warfare tactics, or what did that look like? Your cavalrymen in the late 1800s. What does cavalry warfare look like? What's your weaponry?
Movement, really.
Okay, what's your main weapon? You got a 6-shot carbine, repeating rifle, about yay long. How accurate is it? Somebody look it up. Cavalry carbine, circa 1880.
Wasn't as accurate as the.
It's not a long rifle, but can you hit a target at 200 yards?
Yeah.
200 yards is pretty good. Quite frankly, modern combat, what's the average engagement range in modern combat? You want to venture a guess? You say 1,500? I got one bid at 1,500. Anybody else? Average engagement range in modern warfare.
I'll get the 1100.
Got 1,100, 1,500. Anybody else?
1250.
1250.
Right in the middle. The best spot to be.
The average engagement range is under 200 meters. 200 meters. Look at that building across the way there. Kind of crack the curtain there so that you can see, Brad. Right. How far do you think that is? 120 meters. So this is pretty close to the average engagement range right here. That's about right. From here to that building, right across that very long parking lot. That's how far, that's how far you're typically, most of those engagement ranges, believe it or not, are less than 100 meters. A lot of them are under 50 meters. Why? Cover. Right? Particularly if you're fighting in an urban area, go ahead and you can do that back the other way. Right? So these guys have a carbine accurate out to a couple hundred
They
meters.
said they were known for their accuracy.
Good.
Yeah.
What's it telling you? Is it giving you an idea of how accurate they were, how far they could shoot, how far they could hit?
Doesn't it,
Hang on, I'll let you watch this short video real quick. Well, keep going. So, let's get through this real quick. Let's talk about this weaponry, right? 6-shot carbine, and they're using skirmish tactics primarily. What are skirmish tactics?
Just go sweeping.
Shoot, cover, move. It's very similar to actually what we use today. It's not too far off. 1898. Remember that because I'm going to forget all these lessons here in just a minute. So there's a different kind of warfare that occurs in Spain. Keep going. Tell me more about it. What do you guys know about Theodore Edward Roosevelt?
Yeah, well, he became the president, which at this part of this battle had pushed Teddy into the public eye, launching his political career, which ended up him becoming the president because he led the charge for the Rough Riders.
So some history about him. He was a failed New York politician. He tried politics in New York, wasn't very good at it. He went west to Dakota Territory and decided to become a cattleman. Just a random thing. I don't like politics. I'm gonna go become a cattleman in Dakota. Ran into a lot of corruption and problems out there. Actually, the biggest problem he ran into was he wasn't a very good cattleman, and his cattle were dying. And so he left there. He came back. He was going to try to get into politics, but they were raising a force. He always wanted to be in the military anyway. They're raising the Rough Riders. He had political connections because he was in politics. And so he got an appointment as a lieutenant colonel. And he gets ready to go off to war with the Rough Riders. He's pretty popular at this point already because he was out in Dakota. He became popular. He wasn't the governor. He might have been the governor, but he gained popularity in Dakota. He had popularity in New York. He went with the Rough Riders. He gained popularity there, and they promoted him to colonel. And actually, he was so famous. It was Dewey, whatever his name was, Rough Rider. It wasn't actually his brigade.
Yeah, Colonel Vinny, I didn't even really know Wood's name until
Wood, Colonel Wood, who was actually a good commander.
Yeah.
He was a good commander, but all the news was following that Theodore Roosevelt. And by the way, they later in life they called. Everybody heard of a teddy bear? Where did those come from?
Theodore was hunting the woods, found a small baby bear, he did kill it.
Yeah, he's a good woodsman, but he gets the nickname by the American people as Teddy, Theodore Edward, Teddy, and then becomes a teddy bear. So they make all these bears, and after his presidency, teddy bears become a big deal. Everybody shares teddy bears. He didn't even like the name Teddy, actually, Teddy Theodore Roosevelt. He thought it was a little bit diminutive, but he appreciated the sentiment behind it to some extent. So this is Theodore Roosevelt, and he attacks at San Juan Hill. There's a fortified Spanish position on the. Go ahead, you can finish the battle.
I only had for what the Rough Riders did after the San Juan Hill charged Kettle Hill. They didn't really do much more. It was just mainly because they were volunteer forces they were all volunteers, and because they were also different, it was just romanticized to a very large degree.
Yeah.
They did play a large role in the San Juan Hill victory, but the whole thing, I believe that they were a little overpopularized for what they did.
They were, but there wasn't anything else going on.
Yeah.
So it was a good thing to have it done. Anything, Foster? Okay, let's see what this one says. This will be interesting. This looks like it's National Geographic.
Century has passed since Washington wrote, "To be prepared for war is the most effectual means of promoting the peace."
In 1897, as Assistant Secretary of the Navy, PR finds a cause that can help him redeem his family's honor. In Cuba, a long simmering insurgency against the Spanish colonial empire is coming to a head. TR clamors for military intervention there, arguing that it's America's duty to liberate its oppressed neighbors.
It was Theodore Roosevelt that was the first one to say, we have a responsibility to go over and bring people freedom, our freedom, and mess in their affairs. And quite honestly, that's the trouble that we have now in the Middle East. That's the trouble that we have everywhere in the world, is that we were saying, we're so great, we're going to bring this to you. That was an invention of Theodore Roosevelt.
What Teddy needs is a persuasive cause for attacking Cuba, a weapons of mass destruction argument, and he's about to get one. Remember the Maine? Probably not. Most Americans don't. But that's the U.S. warship that exploded in Havana Harbor in February 1898, taking 254 American sailors to their watery graves. Like 9/11 a century later, the tragedy roused America into vengeful fury and gave Teddy the cause for war he so desperately sought, even though it wasn't clear who was to blame.
Created tremendous war fever in the country and outrage on the part of TR, who thought this hideous act against us was needed to be dealt with immediately.
Theodore Roosevelt simply quits being Assistant Secretary of Navy and says, I'm going to war.
TR uses every bit of his political influence to get a commission as lieutenant colonel in the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry Regiment.
Assembled a combination, and only Teddy Roosevelt could have done this, a combination of Ivy League graduates and cowboys that he had met in the West. And of course, they were called the Rough Riders.
That's actually pretty good. I'd like to see the rest of that movie. That would be interesting to see. That's what happens, right? These boys are all volunteers. They charge this hill, San Juan Hill. It's a relatively fortified position, but then again, they're dismounted cavalry with repeaters. They're using tactics that are a generation ahead of where they should be. And they overcome and they defeat these Cubans, and Roosevelt gains all this notoriety, which is going to vault him to become the president of the United States. All right, let's go on. There's a couple other things happen in this war that are interesting, though, as well. Remember, we talked about the Spanish Empire being over here in Manila Bay. Commodore Dewey, at the same time, there's war. Now, there's a war between us and Spain. By the way, the war in Cuba, pretty quick. It's a few months. It's done. It's over with. The Cubans rout the Spanish. Spanish are out. Cuba gets its independence. But that's not really what happens. What really happens is Commodore Dewey in the Southeast Asia now uses the opportunity to defeat the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay. So he attacks the Spanish fleet and sinks the Spanish fleet out in the Pacific Ocean, half a world away, right? He then seizes, let me make sure I get these things straight so I have them right. They win their independence. Spain is going to lose Guam and Puerto Rico, and they have to sell the Philippines to the United States for $20 million. So these are all territories now. We now have Guam and Puerto Rico. Are they still territories to this day? Yeah, there are. We got them from the Spanish in the war with Spain, where they blew up the Maine. Maybe. Right? You guys following me on this?
But still houses the IRS.
Has what?
It still houses the IRS.
It houses the IRS, exactly. But we get one more thing out of it that's really important as well. During the same time, there's a revolt in Hawaii against Queen, I can't remember her name, Liliuokalani. And we use it as a pretext to back Queen Liliuokalani against the revolutionaries in Hawaii and annex Hawaii. Hawaiian history is even more fascinating. Did we legitimately gain Hawaii as a state? That's whose history you read. A lot of Hawaiians would say, no, you did not. We'd argue we did, because who did we back? Back the Queen against the locals. And when the Queen needed help, we made a deal. Well, we'll help you. You join and become one of the states of the Union, and all of a sudden, you have our help. And when did we admit them to the Union? So let me put that into Google. When did Hawaii become a state?
August 21st, 1959. Why?
So they're annexed prior to that, but they probably don't become a state till 1959. Let me just find out when the rebellion for.
Why state?
Okay, that's probably true.
That is
Much later. Yep. But in the meantime, we have presence there. Let's see. U.S. annexes Hawaii. Let's see when that happens. 1893, January 17th, 1893, in the island of Oahu. Queen Lily, blah, 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 Queen Lily, whatever that is. So that's shortly after this, that final step of that happens. So we use this as an opportunity to get in with the Queen, back the Queen, and then the coup d'etat was overthrown. The Hawaiian kingdom was overthrown. Coup was led by a committee of safety composed of 7 foreign residents and 6 Hawaiian subjects of American descent. So that'll be interesting to see how much of that history is actually accurate. But this is our opportunity to get in to Hawaii. We gain a foothold there, and eventually we annex the country, and eventually it'll become a state in 18. Interesting. Okay, last few things, and then we're gonna go on. Then we'll be done with Spanish-American War, and we're close to being done. Great White Fleet. Who researched the Great White Fleet? Tell me about it.
Fleet was a U.S. Navy battle fleet that, it was from 1907 to 1909. It was ordered by the President Roosevelt as an administration of American naval power to promote goodwill to other countries. Well, and why it was called the White is because the ships were painted white is because of the peacetime color scheme, making them stand out. And the purpose of it was to show U.S. Navy naval strength, especially to the Japan apprehension from the Japanese war, and to test the readiness of a global reach of the U.S. Navy and strengthen ties with other nations. The fleet size was 16 battleships and several support vessels. Impact it established the U.S. as a major world naval power and influenced naval strategy and the ship design in the years leading up to World War I. It mainly demonstrated military strength and naval readiness and into building goodwill.
Take a look at that picture right there. There's your Great White Fleet. Those things are big. They have at least 200 crewmen or so apiece. They're pretty powerful. At the time, those were the pinnacle of technology on the ocean. How far could those things shoot? How big were their guns? These things could probably reach out and touch somebody at 5-10 miles. Their guns on the ship at fleet, they're steel or they're iron ships. So how hard are they to sink? Quite difficult. That's a lot of power. Theodore Roosevelt decides he's going to circle the earth with these things. Put them out there. He sails them to Japan. He sails them off the coast of Asia. He sails them around the world to demonstrate our naval power. Who does this impress? What does this do? Where does this put us? Who are we challenging with this? There's the first thing. Who's our number one challenger? All of a sudden. We're talking navies now.
Stillbird.
What's that?
Is it Stillbird?
England. All of a sudden, we are raising our dominance over England at sea. So you got one of these? You got a fleet like this? England probably has something close, but not quite that big. That's a big fleet. We went to Japan. We're going to talk about Japanese history here shortly, because Japan's history is going to be important when we get up to World War II. But at this point in their history, Japan is still trying to modernize. And we're showing, hey, we're a modern fleet. We actually wanted to be allies with Japan. So we're trying to show them that, hey, we have modern naval power. Let us bring you into the modern ages. Japan's resisting that. We'll get into Japanese history here shortly. Is that?
And now they're all for mine.
Oh, yeah, Japan's history is gonna be fascinating. In fact, I got one of the movies I need you to watch. Homework. Okay? I want you to watch The Last Samurai. Have you seen it?
Now I'm actually meaning to have it.
This is Tom Cruise. I have. It's pretty good. It's again, like all of these movies, there's inaccuracies in them, but take the pieces out of them. That's pretty valuable. That's one of the pieces homework I want you to watch. Watch The Last Samurai. I want you guys to see if you can hunt down, by the way, a series, a DVD series. I have it on actual hard copy DVD, but DVD series, The World at War. You've been eating this soon. It's coming.
How long is the series?
It's like 14 videos. You're not going to watch all of them. I do want you to watch episode 1. Fine. This is for later. This is the rise of Adolf Hitler. Fascinating stuff. In high school, I had a teacher that he decided to spend an entire semester teaching World War II. You know how he taught it? All he would do is every day we'd go into class and he'd show us these videos. They were amazing. I mean, it covers the entire war. There's so much video from World War II. So much video. You can see the whole war in video. You get that series, you're going to really understand World War II. I'm not going to take you that deep into it, but you could. You could go pretty deep into it. Okay. Let's turn the page here for a second. But we got a war that comes between World War II. What happens? What war do we have after the Spanish-American War before World War II?
World War I.
We have that war. Yes, World War I. How are we doing on time? We got time to push into World War I.
Got
Okay. When we get into World War II, the world becomes fascinating. But we'll start with World War I. Let's talk about World War I for a minute. Okay. Let's first of all go into brief European history. Everybody following me still? Hold on a second. Let me do this. I got to play a song. And get you into the genre of what kind of stuff happens in World War I. There's a song that we play. The Lee Corps is probably familiar with. Let's see if you guys remember this thing. Let's see if I've got it. I can find it. I can't. Okay, fine. This way. Safe word to be read. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there. This is a World War I song, right? When America enters the war, where's the war? In Europe. This is the song that becomes extremely popular, right? What's the Americans about to do? We're going over there. But think about what it's in. Yeah, we're coming over, boy. We're coming over. Y'all are a bunch of idiots fighting each other. We're going to bring it into this war. Actually, we do bring it into this. Because we're the fresh force that comes in the end of this. I'm fast forwarding to the end. But I want you to get you in the mindset. This is World War I. Okay? Over there. Let me keep going for a second. I wish I had my louder speakers. These you blared. Where do we play this, by the way? At the ball. This is the last song of the ball. This is over there, and that's now once we understand the context of it, the song has a lot more meaning to it. Word over that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drumming, drumming, drumming everywhere. So say prayer, send the word to be there. We'll be home, we're coming home. We won't come back till it's over. Right? You following me? Okay. Let's get into World War I. Let's start where we ended. What did warfare look like at the end of the war? The last major conflict is what? What was the okay, so other than the Rough Riders, with that unusual little battle with the Rough Riders, what was the last major conflict we just came out of? The Civil War. Remember the end of the Civil War, right? They have these modern rifles and they're using them like muskets. They have rifles and yet they're forming these giant compact formations and fighting as if they still have muskets. What are they missing?
Dude, if you can shoot accurately, shoot from the good place where you can't get shot.
From 200 meters away. Why am I having a fight at 50 meters against an enemy like I was the war before? How did the war end? Anybody remembered after? So we talked about the attack of the assault on the position of Gettysburg. After that, what became the main weapon Robert E. Lee used against the North?
The trench.
Stuff. They built entrenchments. They realized, because Longstreet had been telling them for a long time, sir, just dig in, let them come at you. I've got a rifle. I can pick them off at 200 meters. I can shoot. I can duck down, reload, and pop back up. And what are they going to do? Get in a giant mass formation and cross the battlefield so we can shoot at them? Yeah, that's exactly what they did. Exactly what they did. The Union gets smashed at Cold Harbor, Spotsylvania, Petersburg, over and over and over again. They're using World War I tactics. They're using trenches to defend, and the Union's coming right at them. That's the last war we were in. That's the last war the world remembers. A major war. We're using these frontal assaults. Now, it spreads out a little bit with the Rough Riders. They're going to kind of rush across individually, so not mass formations, but they're still charging across the battlefield. You with me? And now, what's the enemy going to be doing? Same thing Lee did. He's digging in. But what has he added to the equation now? He not only has a defensive position with rifles. What other inventions have occurred between now and then?
The machine gun.
The machine gun. In fact, when was the machine gun actually invented? Type that in.
Like 18. When was the machine gun?
Really, in 1840. That's probably darn close with the Gatling gun. Wait a second. Wait a second.
1884.
Was the invention of the
Well, that's the machine gun.
No, the Gatling gun. Look at the Gatling gun. So that's a fascinating fact that we need to go back and consider when we're studying military history.
1860.
1861. Okay. Guess where these Gatling guns actually were in service and when? Yes, they had machine guns in the Civil War. What? Say that again. They had machine guns available to them in the Civil War. Oh, let that sink in for just a second. What were they doing with the machine guns in the Civil War? Anybody want to know?
They moved squad.
They were using them to guard their artillery pieces, in theory. They did not recognize the value of the machine. At the time, to be fair, the machine gun had like the giant wheels on it. Let me see if we get a picture of a Gatling gun. Yep, I'm gonna throw it up on the screen.
To be fair, this type of machine gun would be good unless for defense mainly.
Oh, I don't know. Give me a picture. There she is, boys. See these things?
Nice. The old one.
Yeah. I mean, they're gonna come on wheels. They probably look more like this at the time, but you get the idea, right? They're big. They're not too big, but still, it's a Gatling gun, and you can. There's a scene in the Last Samurai. In fact, hang on. See if I can pull it up, because it's worth just seeing the thing go to town. All right, give me a new one. Gatling gun scene, Last Samurai.
That model, so.
Okay, I guess this will work. See if it shows it. Yeah, this works. All right, Gatling gun. Yep. You guys get the idea, right? Think about that. Those things were available. Those things were available in the war between the states. Huh. I can think of a lot of really good uses for that. They're lining up on both sides. I've got my brigade, and maybe next to it I have a Gatling gun. I mean, that would be great. I could use this thing for suppression. But what happens in World War I? These things get smaller. You get a Vickers machine gun. Let's find out when the Vickers machine gun was created. British water-cooled 303s. First world used until 1960. When was it invented? Somebody get me a date of invention.
1912.
1912. Perfect.
Especially used that.
Look at this sucker. Look at that thing. There you go. There's a Vickers machine gun. Right? Add this to General Lee's entrenchments. Get these giant earthworks. You have Vickers machine guns. You have rifles now. Now, what kind of rifles do we have going into World War I?
Don't get really becoming, I forgot what it's called.
The M1911, right? Or not the M1911. M1911. The Springfield rifle. You guys use them in drill. Those drill rifles, that's a Springfield. There it is. This thing right here. Model 1903. There you go. It's cartridge loaded. Still only has 4 or 5 rounds, but that loads pretty quick. It tops loads. Pow, 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 pow. Pop it in, pop in another piece. The weaponry is changing. The tactics aren't going to change yet. That's going to be the takeaway. But let's get into this. First of all, let's start off with a brief history of European history. Europe, Louis XVI backs America for the American War for Independence, right? They have a little tantrum in 1789 to 1799. They have the French Revolution. What's the difference between the French Revolution and the American Revolution? What's the difference? What are they fighting?
The French Revolution is trying to throw over the American Revolution.
That's a major takeaway. Good point. I'll repeat that so you can hear it in the face. The Americans are trying to gain independence. The French are trying to actually overthrow the monarch, Louis XVI. Ironically, the French, when they're overthrowing Louis XVI, well, actually, we'll come back to that in a minute. So why are they trying to overthrow him? What's the causes for the French Revolution?
First, there was there was a large amount of economic struggle at the time. They saw the world he was living in. So They didn't like that, and they just stuck to it because they thought it was.
Very good. Marie Antoinette is spending a lot of money. She's like the queen. Louis XVI doesn't kind of put her into check. The people are starving. That's a big piece of it. And then it's kind of, it's almost a socialist movement. So they go in, they overthrow the king. And they kill Louis XVI. They find him, they kill him, they overrun the Bastille. Marquis de Lafayette, you remember him? He's in the middle of all this. He's actually defending the king. And he's able to survive through that, but that's another story. Gives rise to Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. Anybody remember Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte? Short guy, this guy right there. Yeah, he wasn't that short. He was very good. What Napoleon can do is he had the ability to understand how to maneuver troops very quickly. He understood how to calculate the movements of troops. So he, unlike his European counterparts, would know if I go and dispatch a unit now, he'd be able to kind of calculate, okay, they make contact here, and he'd be able to plan engagements to be able to move along multiple routes simultaneously and attack a target. His enemies are still thinking static positions. He's doing maneuver warfare against them. And he uses his cavalry as well. It's still Napoleonic tactics. So it's still masses of men lining up with guns. The same thing we saw on the American Civil War battlefield. The tactics didn't change. They weren't digging in. So Napoleon, Europe at this time is going through the same sort of thing we just went through in our military history. They're having the same military experience. You with me? Okay. France becomes a republic in 1830. Oh, Napoleon, by the way, what does Napoleon do? How does Napoleon get defeated? This is very important.
Old curtains.
Yeah, he invades Russia. So you guys ever seen The Princess Bride? He fell for one of the two classic blunders. The first and most well known of which is never get involved in the land war in Russia. Second is never get involved with a Sicilian, particularly when death is on the line. So he gets involved in a land war with Russia. How did the Russians beat Napoleon?
You could just made it stop and freeze to death.
He froze to death. He forgot that it gets cold in Russia, and his army came in spring clothing, and literally they froze to death. That's how the Russians defeated Napoleon. Napoleon retreats. He goes back to France. He gets exiled the first time. He escapes exile. He comes out again. He goes to attack. This time he's defeated at the Battle of Waterloo by the English. By the English. All right. France establishes a constitutional monarchy that gradually, what's a constitutional monarchy? Take a guess.
Like the Constitution, they're trying to replicate Senate, but more as in like they're the leaders acting more as the president sort of.
They have a king. Everybody's looking at America going, that's an interesting idea. In fact, we were watching the movie Hamilton last night with Jensen and I. It's funny. This is worth seeing. Hold on, let's see if I can get the scene on Hamilton. Hopefully, what you call it doesn't shut me down. YouTube. Okay. Hamilton play. Scene with King George. Didn't know. Can give up power. Let's see if I can find that. See what this does for me. Hold on, let's see if this does this. Let's see what this does. This is, by the way, have you guys seen Hamilton? It was one of your assignments. You need to see it. It's actually a rap musical, sort of, but it's done really well. It's all black actors except for the guy who plays the King of England. So this is the King of England. Let's see what happens here. So George Washington retires in this scene, right? See what happens. George Washington retires. He sets down his kingdom or his presidency.
Are they going to keep on replacing whoever's in charge? If so, who's next? There's nobody else in their country who looms quite as large. What? John Adams. I know him. That can't be. That's that little guy who spoke to me all those years ago. What was it, 85? That poor man begged to eat him alive. Ocean's breath, empires fall next to Washington. They all watch them run. And we will tear each other into pieces. Jesus Christ is going to be on.
He's the funniest character.
Yeah, you, okay.
Good luck.
Yeah, you guess it's hilarious. That's actually, if you get into the movie and you get to see all the things, and you just understand the history that you understand, you'll enjoy it, right? But anyhow, the rest of the world is looking at us crazy, like, wait a minute, wait, you changed presidents? So George Washington won the war. He wouldn't become the king. He didn't even participate in the Constitutional Convention other than to watch. He finally became the president twice, and now he's going to resign? That doesn't happen. That didn't happen anywhere. Nowhere. So the rest of Europe's going, it seems you can resign? That happens? And a new guy comes up and you do this voluntarily and this happens? Right? So this is revolutionary in all kinds of ways. For now, Europe is trying to mimic this. They're like, okay, constitutional monarchy. They're downplaying the king after the war with America begins to lose a lot of power. Parliament raises, and it gradually, the constitutional portion of the monarch eventually just becomes a figurehead, which it is today, right? That's what's the king in England today. He's a figurehead. He's a diplomat. He does some stuff, but really he doesn't have any power other than what power Parliament gives him. So what you're seeing in this time frame is in Europe, you're seeing the shift to power from constitutional monarchy to just a republican government, to a democratic republic. That's what's happening in Europe, in England, and in France. Both of those countries are making that transition. Napoleon is that transition. By the way, the funny part about this is, it's not somewhat funny. The French overthrow King Louis XVI. And then they start to go to war with England. They have problems with England, and they want us to back them. Should we back France against England? Why do they say we should back them?
Against England.
Well, we went against England, but why should we back the French against England? They backed us. What's our response? What's George Washington's response to that? Wait a minute. The guy who actually backed us was who? Louis XVI. Y'all cut his head off. So if you want to bring me his head, I'll ask his head whether or not we should, back y'all. So that was our take. Is actually we were backing, we would have backed Louis XVI. We're not going to back radical French government that now is at war with England. We're not getting involved in Napoleon's wars. What this boils down to, we're not going to get involved in a conflict with Napoleon. No, Napoleon. Y'all overthrew the guy who backed us. There's an interesting twist of fate happens here. So that all of that happens. Internal wars in if you go through the history of England, let's go. History of England is long and sordid. There's a series of kings. You've got Oliver Cromwell, William of Orange, the Glorious Revolution. There's a whole series of wars. They end up with a king. The king runs the empire. The empire expands all the way to America, and it slowly collapses. After America rebels, the British Empire is hit its zenith, and it begins to decline. And the Parliament gains power. All of this is happening, right? There's some more stuff happens. Let's see. They lost the colony in 1783. There are the following major empires in the world at the time. Let me get the empire map up so everybody can see this. Told you we're going to cover a lot of ground today. Map of World War One empires. Okay. Hang in there, guys. Whoops, not maps, sorry. Images, thank you. This may not be bad. What does this look like? There we go. There's a good, there's perfect map. Nice, easy one to read. I think this will work. See what this looks like. Austria. Okay, perfect. This is a fairly good map of what the world looked like, sort of. Romania, Hungary, Austria, not quite. It's not quite the map. Austria, Hungary, Russia. There's the map right there. Boom. That's the pre-war map right here. Okay. Perfect. Everybody see this map? What are we looking at? Somebody orient me.
That's.
Yep. You got Great Britain up here to the left, right? London. You see Russia, Germany, Austria-Hungary Empire, the Turkish Ottoman Empire, the French Empire, the Spain, the Spanish, the Italians, and then you got the Greek states down below. Right, you also have Denmark, Belgium, very interesting point. Netherlands, Switzerland. What's Switzerland like? Anybody ever? They're neutral. How is it they're able to be neutral?
They attacked everybody. That window.
Yeah, but what's
The mountain.
they have a giant mountain range, goes all the way around them, and it's just a little country inside of this mountain range. Really hard to get into Switzerland. It's really frozen, high altitude. There's little natural resources in there that are worth taking. Nobody really wants to go through the effort of taking Switzerland. The other reason that Switzerland's hard to overtake is everybody in Switzerland's in the military. All of them. So you're going to go over the mountains in frozen territory. There's no roads. There's little logistics, little to take to defeat them, but they're all armed. They all have machine guns and stuff under their beds. Anybody want to do that? Why would we do that? They just go around. So let them stay up there. They get the bank. They can be the neutral, and they stay neutral for 2 wars, all the way through World War One, all the way through World War II. Nobody bothers to attack Switzerland. It's just not worth the effort. Keep that in mind. Okay, here's your empires. All right. Sick man of Europe. Let's start with Turkey. The Ottoman empires. You go far enough back in Turkish history, you get the Crusades. Remember, Muhammad goes up there. Muhammad, by the way, Islam attacks all the way up into France, all the way they're knocking on the door of Europe, and the counterattack begins. Genghis Khan comes out of northeast Russia, comes down to Mongolia, comes on down, attacks into Muhammad, puts him at a stalemate. We attack by launching the counterattack into the Holy Lands. Doesn't do great for us, but we stop them. And then Turkey, what's left of Turkey, becomes an independent nation, the Ottoman Empire. Okay, it's its own little empire. It's largely Islamic, but it's also Christianized. It's some of each. It's a really weird empire, but it's falling apart. That one's falling apart. It's called the Sick Man of Europe. Austria-Hungarian Empire. Large empire right there in the middle. Right here. Austria-Hungarian Empire here. It has most of the Slavic states in it. Later on, you'll see that. France and England are transitioning to democratic republics, so that happens. Spain loses their king. Get what happens to Spain after that. I'd have to go read Spanish history. They become unimportant, so I stopped following them for just a minute. Everybody's with me, right? Okay. World War One. What did they call it when it started? Was it World War One? That would have been depressing if they actually started it out. Hey, this is World War One. Oh, does it mean there's a sequel? Yes, there's a sequel to World War One. It was okay, but it actually had a different name. The Great War. It was the war to end all wars. This is the war that's coming. What happens in these interwar years, after the rise and fall of Napoleon, and we get into these new nations, we have all of these treaties come in. There's a series of treaties that occur. There's all these behind the scenes treaties between Germany, Germany is backing Austria, who is backing, let me make sure I have this right. I gotta remember who's backing him here. Germany is backing Austria, is backing Turkey. They're all have these alliances. France is backing Serbia. Russia is backing Serbia. France is backing Russia. England is backing France. Everybody has an alliance under the table so that they won't keep invading each other. Because for hundreds of years before this, all these nation states are attacking each other. They got tired of everybody attacking each other, so they all have these alliances. Well, if you attack me, Russia's going to jump in on my side. Well, yeah, well, if you attack Austria, Germany's going to jump in on my side. Okay, cool. You stay on your side. We'll stay on our side. Everybody be cool. We'll have life in Europe. You with me? What major event occurs on June 18th, 1914? There he is. Assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. All right, so this fella here, I guess I'll give you the actual picture. There he is. The Archduke Ferdinand of the Austria-Hungarian Empire is assassinated by a Serbian. Who in Serbia? I don't know. I'd have to research it, but he's assassinated by Serbia. So Austria is going to declare war on, wait for it, Serbia. But because Austria declares war on Serbia, ironically, who's allied with Serbia? Well, Serbia, Russia. Russia is allied with Serbia. So Germany goes to war with Russia. Wait a minute, stop. Say that again. Hold on. Let me go back through that again. Serbia, here, these guys here, shoot the Archduke of Austria. Austria's ticked. They're going to go to war with Serbia. Russia says you can't do that. We're backing Serbia. Well, Germany's backing Austria. Says fine. Germany then says we're going to declare war on Russia. Well, Austria, Serbia, and now Germany has just declared war on Russia. You guys with me? Happened like that. Yeah. So France says, well, wait a minute. We're allies with Russia. So if you're going to war with Russia, then we're going to war with Austria and Germany. France mobilizes to support Russia. How about that for an interesting twist of events? Germany is going to decide to fight France. The problem is everybody is prepared. Everybody is beginning to be prepared for these. They watched the American Civil War. They watched the Napoleonic tactics. They're prepared for these long defensive wars. Germany does not want to go. Where's the border between Germany and France? Look up here on the screen. It runs from Switzerland up through Belgium. That border right there. It's a very small border, and France is able to defend it pretty well. So they mobilize, and they're prepared to defend themselves against Germany. Okay, Germany comes up with something called the von Schlieffen Plan. And remember this plan, because you're going to hear it happen 3 times in history. They're going to invade France by invading Belgium. Like going through here, pain in the neck. You got the Ardennes Forest. It's heavily fortified. Why don't we just go this way? We're not really at war with Belgium. Yeah, but who cares? They're Belgium. They're a little tiny country. Let's just go through Belgium. So they decide to attack France by attacking through Belgium. Von Schlieffen Plan. It works great at first. They get into France, and then this long trench warfare digs in. I want you guys to do some research this week. Here's your work. I want you to watch find this series, watch The Last Samurai. I want you to read about trench warfare. Almost out of time for tonight, so I'm giving your homework assignments. I want you to look up them. Actually, let me give you some assignments. Hold on, let's pass them out. Okay. Who do I got here today? I got Walker. Got Foster. Got Chandler. Caleb. Got Thomas. All right, Walker,
Sir.
I want you to look at the von Schlieffen plan.
Sir.
Explain what that is. Foster,
Yes, sir.
look up trench warfare.
Sir.
More to come. 1 second. I guys want you to watch video clips on Gallipoli. Gallipoli ground assault. There's a movie on it. A great one. I want you to see it. Just go look it up on video. We'll probably watch it in class, but I want you to have seen it once before we get into it.
Start using zigzag trenches instead of straight ones. That
During this war right here. During this war right here. This is where it gets very interesting. Fascinating. I want Chandler, I want you to research this guy. I want you to research him in World War One, not World War Two. Very famous in World War Two, but I want you to look up Erwin Rommel and what he does in World War One. Now, let me give you some other fascinating stuff. Caleb. Research the night of the long knives. Thomas. Okay. Still on part 9, aren't we? I gotta get to some. I gotta get a little bit further forward. Or we're gonna be behind. Okay. All right, I'm gonna sign yours at the end of this. Let's move forward. I gotta get through a little bit more because I'm gonna keep you on track. All right, the rest of European history. Okay, all right, so we got through English history. Let's go through Russian history. Let's get through Russian history. Who knows anything about the history of Russia? Go ahead.
During this time, it was empire was. I'm not gonna. Can't remember what the Russians called it, but it was a king at the time.
The Tsar.
The Tsar, yes.
Yep.
The Tsar. It was starting to fall at this point. The Russians did not have the greatest economic state at this point. They had a lot of men, a lot of land mass. The Tsar were ruling as kings, and they saw what was going on with all the other countries, and they began to overthrow the Tsar around this time.
Good. All right, so these are the czars. The one that's important is Nicholas II. You guys have seen, I like to quote the Avengers a lot, right? Who's the Black Widow? What's her name? Natasha Romanov. The Romanov family is the family that gets betrayed in the Russian Revolution. That's coming. Coming up into World War I, we got the czars. The Tsar of Russia is the king of Russia. Russia has gone through a series of czars. So they got a series of kings. They're large, they have a large population, but a lot of it is agricultural, right? So they're not a heavily industrialized nation. They have some industry, but a lot of their population is spread out. The land mass of Russia is massive. It's huge. So it's a big span of control, difficult to maintain. They're gonna go into, during World War I, they're gonna have some major economic issues. But going into World War I, the economy of Russia is not very good. They still have some prestige, but their economy is not strong. So the people start to starve. In fact, during World War I, usually they have, most of their soldiers get 3 bullets a day. So they gotta, you shoot one at breakfast, wait till lunchtime, you get to shoot another one at dinner time. That's not gonna work out real well. You can see that happen. Some things that are going on behind the scenes in Russia, you gotta be aware of. The son of the Tsar has a blood disorder, and he reached out to, oh shoot, what's the name of the, hold on a second. This, shoot, all the Romanov dynasty. There you go. That's gonna be. Thomas is home. I want you to research all of the Romanov dynasty. Rasputin. Rasputin's in the middle of it. That's his name. His name is Rasputin. What's that?
It's a song which should make.
That's good. Let me hear the song.
Yeah.
Well, tell me what you know.
A little bit about,
It's not from the time.
Okay.
It's a pop song which was adapted from Prime. That time Rasputin was probably the funniest attempted assassination, even though assassination shouldn't be funny.
Right.
To me, it was the funniest tried assassination ever. Rasputin, he was seen as a spiritual leader and healer at the time.
Yep.
And that's why he was called upon to save the Tsar's son from the blood disease.
That's right.
But he was also a major organizer.
There's that as well.
Really.
Yep. And he's not a very reputable character, so he gives discredit to the Tsar dynasty. So this is going to bring about the overthrow of the Romanovs. But wait for that, because I don't want to unpack that entirely yet. I do want to unpack some more stuff. What are the teams? World War I. There's 2 teams. Central Powers. Who's in the Central Powers?
Would that be Germany, Austria, and Turkey?
Central Powers is Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire. Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire. Who's ruling Germany? Kaiser Wilhelm. I'll give you another movie to watch this week, or at least part of it. So you got The Last Samurai. Find the World of War series. Look for episode 1. Watch the ground assault portion of Gallipoli. If you can see any portion of the movie The Red Baron, that's good to watch. That's a good movie. You got lots of movies to watch this week. I need you to watch some movies. Spend some time each evening. Sit down at the end of the night when you're tired. Pop in one of these movies and watch it. Gallipoli, you only have to watch a few minutes of. Watch all of The Last Samurai. Watch at least a good chunk of The Red Baron so you get a sense of what he does and how the war goes. And then who's opposing the Central Powers?
Oh, everybody else.
Not quite. The Triple Entente. Who's in it?
Russia.
Russia?
France.
France? Who comes to France's aid?
Britain.
England. Yeah, interesting. France doesn't. Here's the interesting thing. England doesn't enter the war until the neutrality of Belgium is violated. So while it's a great way to defeat France by marching through Belgium, it has the slight disadvantage of ticking off the British.
Sounds like you really want to do that.
Right, exactly. Now, they probably would have come in on the French side anyway, but that just gave them the excuse. Hey, you guys just invaded a neutral country, Belgium. Imagine being before Belgium, I don't know, what do you call it, Belgium, Belgish, whatever they are. Those guys. Imagine being those guys. Wait, you want France so you're going to invade through us? Why did they invade through that way, by the way? Yeah, and the railroads. It gave them the railroad access, so they can use the railroads to invade. All right. That gets me through a good portion of it. Let me get you to the opening scenes of World War I. The battle for France. It begins with with an invasion, and they break down to the Battle of the Marne. The Battle of the Marne. Germany and France both field armies. Their armies that they're fielding are million-man armies. How big? Million-man armies. These are massive armies. These nations mobilize in large numbers. A million-man army. Nobody adapted their tactics. So what ends up happening? French warfare, what does it look like?
A lot of sitting around trying to run up the battlefield and failing.
Anybody play the game Battlefield 1? Okay. You guys have, look up here at some of these pictures, right? These are the trenches. This is what they look like. They'll dig these earthworks. They'll all be, I mean, they're dug way in, right? And what happens in these trenches, as they learned at the end of the war, is it's safe. Can you get hit by artillery in a trench? Not usually, right? Artillery has to land in the trench to get you. If it protects you from artillery fire from above, nobody realizes it protects you from artillery fire at first. So you're largely protected. However, in these trenches, if you're living in these trenches, what's one of the greatest threats inside this trench, believe it or not? Disease. Yeah. There's rats, there's mud, there's sickness. You're going to lose a lot of guys to disease. This is a nasty place to be, right? And if you get wounded and you're exposed to these kind of diseases, you're going to lose limbs all the time. Those are these trenches. Okay. I guess this is a good. How's this look? All right, this is a series of trenches. You can see that they dig these trenches in series, right? You can maneuver front to back in these trenches. There's wire. These trenches are connected via wire. There's a wire and there's a telephone at the end of each wire so you can communicate from trench to trench. In between it is no man's land. In between, there's a trench. You can see there's a trench on the far side of this. You see this trench way over there? There's a trench on this end, or over there. And then you can imagine on the other end where he's taking this picture, there's another trench. So you got these two trenches staring across each other. Across it is no man's land. Look at it. It's been torn to crap. It's been artillery gunned down. There's nothing left living in this no man's land, except for these gun craters. These craters are where bombs have hit it. This is no man's land. And these two armies will sit on both sides of this trench. One army will, this side, they have their trenches, their series of trenches over here. There's no man's land. And over here, there's this other series of trenches over there, right? How are the two armies going to get at each other? I got enough time, I'll show it to you.
Still watching.
You're still going to watch it, but I just want you to see a little bit of this. Let's see if I've got it. Where is it? If I can find it. Come on now. Where's the movie? I don't see it. Movie Gallipoli. That's the movie. Gallipoli, 1981. That's not going to be the scene I want. Maybe it's this. See what happens here. Nope. I can't find it. Gallipoli, movie Gallipoli is right this way. Movie Gallipoli, Final Assault.
Maybe let's see. Come on.
Okay, I'm gonna have to hunt that one down for you guys. I have to buy the video, show it to you. 'Cause they're not. Okay. What happens, I mean, these two militaries stand on either side of each other. And they're gonna charge across this open area. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna try to use their artillery. Remember when Finnish charged across the hill and they're pounding the position and they're expecting by the time they get in there, everybody's gonna be dead? What'd they find? No one was dead, or very few people were dead. They were just laying down. When the guns stopped shooting, everybody got up in their positions. Same thing happens over and over again in World War One. They do these timed assaults where they have this artillery supposed to move out in front of you, supposed to advance in front of you to keep the enemy down. And then as soon as you're following this curtain of lead, as you follow it, the curtain disappears and you're on top of them before they can get back in the trenches. Great idea. What are the communication tools at the time? Yeah, strangers, exactly. There's no radios. You've got a wire attached to and I can maybe communicate that. The only way they can do that is they can do it by watch. All right. The bombardment's going to last from 8 o'clock to 8:05. You got 5 minutes. Boom, 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 boom. And at 5:01, 5 minutes and 1 second, you need to be right behind it. How carefully you think you can coordinate that thing on a massive scale? Pretty hard to do. At the Battle of the Marne, the total casualties, 600,000 men. Wrap that number around your brain. 600,000 men. Million-man armies each, just 30% of each army was killed or wounded in the first war battle. Stalled the attack into France, and the reality of the trench warfare begins to kick in. The staggering losses that are taken, they're enormous. And we're gonna have to start talking about some tactics here in a minute, because some things begin to happen behind the scenes. It's going to be back and forth. The entire war is waged over a very short frontage. Let me go back into these pictures so you can see it, right? The front line of the entire war really exists principally, where is it? Right along here. That's the entire war is fought like in this little area right here, back and forth up and down that line. Same men charging back and forth across the line. Over and over again. The Battle of the Marne, the Battle of the Somme, the Battle of the Argonne. It's the same scene. It's the French turn. They charge across the battlefield. The Germans charge. The English charge. Everybody just takes their turns going back and forth. What's going to change that? What piece of weaponry is going to be developed? A tank. Tank is going to change warfare at the end of World War One. But we'll get into this some more like next time, because I think we're out of time. And we're going to pick right up here. We're going to go right into World War One. We're going to start at the Gallipoli campaign, and we're going to get into all the things that happened through the end of World War One. Okay. I realize some of that was dry, so I apologize. Usually it's a lot more interesting, but this is the history you got to push through to kind of get to understand what causes World War II. Free aside.
After World War One, under wage much conscription.
What causes World War II in a single phrase? World War One causes World War II. There's your takeaway. So you have to know how World War One unpacks, because once you get to World War II, what happens at the end of World War II? The whole modern world happens, and all of the problems that we have today, all the things that occur out of World War II, set the stage for the modern scenario, the modern scene. This is where all of a sudden history becomes extremely relevant to you. Obviously, all of this history is important to you. It's all American history. But now we're going to get into world history, how America sits on that stage and how it all expands. It starts right here when they shoot the Archduke Ferdinand in Serbia. The world changes and it never goes back. It's going to change again. And it's going to change again here. So, okay, let me give you the rest. Everybody got an assignment for the week? Let's take a good picture of that thing. All right, don't forget, I need your papers. If you are going to get the English credit, I need to start looking at your papers so I can start giving you some feedback. I got 2 papers. I'll give you feedback on the 2 papers that I do have. What questions do we have? I need something that you learned tonight. We're gonna go around the room. Start with Thomas, we'll go that way. One thing you learned.
Just the Great White Fleet. I don't know about that. Just how it's sailing around and that we're trying to become allies with Japan. That was interesting.
Very good. Caleb,
Learn more about modern tactics or tactics like trenching and alongside how they did it in scouting line.
good. And we're gonna get into tactics, by the way. This, when you see this, this is where we're gonna break down here shortly into actually modern tactics, where it comes from. You guys do some modern tactics. We're gonna talk about combined arms and all those things when we start studying Irwin Roth. By the way, if anybody wants a great book to read, this is an additional assignment. You don't have to look it up, but if you want it, this is a reading for tenants technically in the week code. The name of the book is Tactics by Irwin Roth. He's the father of modern maneuver warfare. He and Conskadarian. All right. Chandler.
This was towards the end, but I actually didn't know that World War I called World War II.
And you're gonna see it. You're gonna see it. It's the results of World War I they're gonna bring about. It's gonna bring about the rise of Hitler. World War I is gonna bring, it's gonna change the stage. It's gonna bring about the rise of Stalin, Joseph Stalin, the rise of Adolf Hitler. It's gonna bring around the rise of, in the meantime, Hirohito comes to power. Mao Zedong comes to power. Who else am I missing? Yeah. Major empires are gonna collapse. Major tyrants come to the scene, and you're gonna see World War II is some fascinating stuff. Foster.
I learned about the USS Maine and the debate. It actually was an accident or the Spain blew it up.
Yeah, did we have a reason to go to war with Spain? I don't know. That's a good question.
I learned about how the Indians, about how the Indians were the original people with which were in the wrong for the war, but because they were in the wrong, they ended up becoming wrong. That's when thought everything was wrong.
But just keep in context, our sins in regards to American Indians are relatively small on the whole. That's the takeaway, right? Everybody thinks, well, we have an illegitimate country because we kicked Indians out. It's true in a couple of minor cases. On the whole, it's not true. That's the takeaway.
I learned a ton about the Indians, yeah.
Good. All right. So you guys are still picking up some stuff. All right. Stick with me, guys. We've got this. We got 3 more classes after this. Well, let me just look at the calendar. We're down to 3 classes after this, I think. 1, 2. Yeah, we got 3 more classes. So I got to get through World War I and World War II next time. Should have got through World War I. And then I got to get into the Cold War. Yeah, a lot of stuff happens in the Cold War. All right, I got to pick up the pace for next week, but I had to get you through some tough stuff. All right, let us close in a word of prayer. Lord God, I thank you for today and the privilege to serve in your kingdom. I thank you for these fine young men. May you equip them to serve you in your kingdom, Lord. May they remember the lessons that are taught here today, that they can teach them to their children, their children's children, Father. That your glory may be seen in all that they do. May they carry the gospel in their tongues and on their feet wherever they go. Ask these things in the name of the Holy Son, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns forever on high. And amen. Okay. Right. Got to get through. Make the American here. So I know where I left it. I'll say 12 hours. Yeah.
Driving for a while.
Yeah.
The 8 hours, 8 hours. Pretty. It's like it's just straight driving. It's like sometimes, but you know, it's gonna be. It's like 7 right now. It's how to do yeah.
Although you'll get some of it maybe tomorrow. Here for you. Some other ones. Oh, let me stop the recording. Okay. Stop recording. Perfect. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, they start using gas and